everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sleep Paralysis News. This is a space where we get to talk about unusual things, things that aren't the normal narrative in this everyday society. Specifically, we're talking about sleep paralysis, sleep state, things that happen during that state. And today, we have a guest that's I'm really looking forward to hearing her story, Madia. She's experiencing strange sleep dream phenomena, and I'm keen to hear all about it, Madia. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. So over to you then, Madia. Let's hear what's been happening with you.
Sure. So this was a dream I had recurring throughout my life. And I actually haven't had this dream for quite some time. And I can kind of lead into the last dream I had and how it differed from the rest. And then I never had it again. So that's an interesting element. But I'll say that this recurring dream first started when I want to say when I was in high school. And it essentially went like this. I would go to sleep, and in my dream, I would approach this, it was like an old decrepit, like white, almost farmhouse type looking building in the middle of a field. And the field was very beautiful, but there was this house, and I had this feeling about it, but for some reason, I went into this house because that's what you do in dreams, I guess. But and the moment I opened the door, I felt this immediate heaviness and just this overwhelming terror. And the thing that stands out the most about the dream is just that overwhelming sensation of being completely terrified. And also within the dream, having difficulty moving through the house. And for some reason, I felt like there was something I needed to do in the house. Like I would try and go up the stairs, and then I would realize it was getting too intense and I would try to leave. But when I would try to leave, the pressure and the feeling of not being able to move just got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I didn't see anything in the dream. It was almost like I had the sensation of the air like vibrating. There was this sense of vibration in the air, just like this shaking. Not like there was an earthquake, not like the floor was shaking, but the actual air was just shaking with energy, I suppose. And I knew that there was a presence there, and it was just, again, it's like I can't really even articulate quite the immense terror that came with this dream. And then I would wake up and I would have it again. And this kind of happened sporadically through, I want to say, high school. I'd have it occasionally, and I would be very scared when I woke up. And then there was a period of time in my early 20s where I started having this dream again after a period of a few years of not having it at all. I started having the same dream, exact same dream again. And it happened every night. And it got to the point where the dream itself, the feeling of terror that I felt in my body was so intense that I didn't want to go to sleep anymore. I would intentionally try and keep myself awake and not go to sleep because I knew if I went to sleep, I would have this dream again. And the dream was so terrifying, I didn't want to experience it. And of course, we can't keep ourselves awake I tried, but yeah, so I mean, that was the gist of the dream. It was very simple. It was just this feeling of terror. And the last dream I had was during this period of time where I was having them kind of every night, and I was trying to keep myself awake and not go to sleep. the dream shifted a little bit where I was actually able to make it to the top floor of this house. And um, and then the pressure and the sense of not being able to move and the fear started like coming in pretty intensely while I was in the top room of this house, the top floor. And then I noticed that the walls were starting to change color. And as the walls became more blue, I realized that the whatever power, whatever entity, whatever thing I was feeling was growing. And as they changed color, became more white, it was like it was going away. And somehow I was able to switch into a sort of almost more lucid state of dreaming, I suppose, where I was kind of aware of what was happening and I started to feel like I was a little bit more in control. And I simply sort of mentally painted the room a different color. And then started feeling like this whole painting room thing was sort of silly and ridiculous. And the fear was still there, but it was starting to sort of dissipate. And as I got better at keeping the room the right color that was not associated with the crazy fear, tremor, air tremor type experience, uh, the fear in the dream and the sense of not being able to move became less and less. And then I woke up and I haven't had the dream since. And so, I was in my 20s when I last had this. And so it's been probably a good 15 years or so now since I've had that dream, but I still remember it very vividly. And I can almost feel, uh, I can still feel almost somatically what it was like to be there. That hasn't really left.
Okay, so I can see the resonance between your experiences and sleep paralysis, but you unpick them for the listeners. What makes you feel the relationship between your experience and the sleep paralysis experience?
I think the things that jumped out to me, even though I was asleep and not actively awake and not able to move, but there was the feeling of in the dream, first of all, having very difficulty moving. And that difficulty moving was caused by some sort of terrifying entity that I felt was very much present there. Um, and it was mostly just this really profound feeling of just, I mean, the terror was just overwhelming. It's such a simple dream, and there was no really reason to feel frightened in this dream. I wasn't being chased. It was simply for me, what jumped out, it was like this feeling of a presence, like a real, yeah, an entity, for lack of a better word. I don't know, but a presence that was very overwhelming and terrifying. And for me, that was the thing that I think uh, kind of rung some bells in my head a little bit.
I noticed that when you were talking about your experience, you said you personalized the entities,
Oh, I
whatever.
didn't even realize I
Yeah,
did
you
that.
did. Yeah, you did. You did. And you were talking about the changing of the colors, they would change color. That's how you were referring to it, which I thought was quite interesting. So there's
Hmm.
some kind of relational thing going on there between you and whatever it is that was
Hmm.
there, that was present. I wondered if anything happened outside of the sleep state when you were dreaming. Did you sense them there or anything like that, either before or after the dream or the sleep?
Uh, I mean, when I woke up, I did feel frightened, as though that presence felt so real and overwhelming in the dream that I kind of wondered if there was something there. My rational, my logical brain, my dismissive that part of my brain that wants to dismiss these things as having a very just be like it was just a dream. I think that part of my brain did take over pretty quickly. Um, During the period of time where I was getting these dreams every night and not wanting to go to sleep, um, it's interesting to think back on it, because I don't know that I consciously felt or worried or thought that there was an actual presence in my waking state, but I was frightened, and I had this sense of, how do I explain it? I felt like something was waiting for me to close my eyes. I felt like, and in my head, I was thinking it was waiting for me in my dream state, in my, in this very non-physical, not real world. But there was a sense of, if I close my eyes, if I allow myself to go to sleep, something is waiting for me. And so in that sense, yeah, if I think back on it, maybe there was a sort of, like a really subtle sense of something being there. And for whatever reason, I wasn't experiencing it upon a waking state, but I had this sense that there was something like waiting to sort of jump in as soon as I went to sleep. That makes sense. Yeah.
And how did you rationalize your experiences?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think I did a very good job. I think I left it as a big question mark. I couldn't explain it. I thought, well, I'm sure lots of people have bad dreams, terrifying dreams, nightmares, reoccurring nightmares, and this is mine, and maybe it's due to some sort of my own, internal stress that's coming out in my dream state. But that explanation that I gave myself wasn't quite, it never really landed for me, because it wasn't a stressful dream, it was a terrifying dream. And I did start to feel, I mean, I grew up with a little bit of, well, in a religious household. And so I, I was open to this idea of spiritual entities, but I also had this very, like, I don't know. I always hesitated to get, don't get too crazy with the spiritual stuff. You go to church, or you do this or you do that, but real spiritual entities, like actually having them in your life, just seems sort of like a mythological, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I did have the thought, all that to say, I did have the thought cross my mind that potentially I was dealing with some sort of, like, an actual demonic force. And then I felt crazy for thinking that. And so I just let it, just like, we can let
Yeah,
that.
so with Sheila's comment, I was going to ask you right before, if you're having reoccurring dreams, what do you think that is from? Is that something you're not acknowledging in your real life, and your conscious mind and subconscious mind are conflicting? Why are you having reoccurring dreams? What does that mean to you?
Mhm. Yeah. In general, I would say a reoccurring dream is maybe something that yeah, maybe I have to work through in my own life, and it's coming up. My subconscious is bringing it up in my dream over and over again because it's saying, this is something you need to look at. This is something we need to work through, and you're not working through it in your normal life. So we're going to work through it when you're sleeping. And that very well could have been the case for this particular dream as well, that there was something going on in my life at the time that I wasn't acknowledging, wasn't seeing, or didn't want to see. And somehow it was coming up in my dream for me to deal with. But I can't tell you what that was, especially when I started having it when I was younger when I was like in high school. I don't remember having any sort of, other than typical high school, I'm sure, drama that comes up here and there that I can't even remember now. I don't remember having any sort of big or profound issues that I was working through. Or the second time when it came up a little later in my 20s and I had it night after night after night, I was in a period of time where I was going through a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. I was feeling very unmoored in my life and very uncertain of where my life was going, kind of purposeless. And so there was a component during that period of my life where I was dealing with some sort of heavy emotional things while I was having this recurring dream as well. So yes, very well, the two could have been, the dreams could have been tied to that sort of intense time that I was going through.
I think for me, there's several things that stand out that make it more fit within the non-traditional types of kind of answers to what it is. And for me, it's the recurring nature of you call it a dream. It's how does it happen that it's the same scenario over and over and over again? I mean, unless the brain is capable of doing that, creating that same experience over and over, it sounds to me that it could well be something that's been from the outside projected in, perhaps. There's also the sense that I get from you that there's a sense of realness about the experience, vividly real, and that you could literally feel that there was a presence there. That also makes me think that there's something going on there as well, and it's also the fact that it was so real that it caused you to become sleep deprived. And I know that a lot of experiencers who experience sleep paralysis, the fear-based ones, they're terrified to sleep, and exactly your words, they were waiting for me to sleep. I know I've said it before based on my experiences. It's almost as though they're waiting to get you when you're sleeping. That's what it feels like. And then I must also mention the fact that you started off your story saying that it was difficulty moving through the house.
Yeah.
Sleep paralysis experiences can't physically move. It's interesting that your paralysis wasn't in your physical body, but it seems like you physically couldn't move through the house. So there are those overlaps and similarities there. And then there's also the fact that you're on the show, that there's something about the discussion on the show that makes it not quite fit within that rational pathology. You know, there's something a bit otherworldly, mystical, paranormal, perhaps that's going on. And in this space, you felt it, you can share that here and you can discuss that angle here with us, which I commend you and I feel really appreciative of, that you trust the space here to be able to discuss that, you know. But even though it doesn't fit the traditional sleep paralysis model, you know, where you wake up and you're immobilized, and that yours is in a different environment, it still, for me, fits the model. You know, you go to sleep and it's almost as though you cross some kind of a threshold, and you're and stuff that don't happen normally, that don't fit in the rational kind of terms, happens, that you can't explain. No matter how much you try, you can't, it just doesn't fit the current molds that we have, both in terms of language and experiences, you know. And also it has stayed with you. That's another thing about sleep paralysis experiences, or these kinds of threshold crossing experiences. They stay with us. No matter how many years pass, you never forget that one. And you can recount it as if it happened yesterday, or it's just happened, you know. So there's lots of overlapping threads and similarities with the traditional kind of sleep paralysis experience. Do you want to say anything, Cyrus, before we close?
Um, just what is your scientific and spiritual explanation for this? You know, we kind of seems like it's either one or the other. I like to, not separate the two, but in your words, what's the scientific reason for this happening to you and what's the spiritual reason? And that would be my
Hmm.
last question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, similar to you, I think there's actually so much overlap between science and the spiritual. I mean, science itself, I think, is a very spiritual, you go deep enough into science, right? And you think, this is amazing, this is magical that the world works this way. And so to me, there's always a spiritual component to the scientific. As far as my explanation for this dream, or whatever it was, maybe not a dream. I've always had a sense that so I am a very vivid dreamer and I dream a lot. So I'll say that, it's not uncommon for me to dream a lot through the night and have very vivid dreams and wake up even feeling tired, like I did work like through the night. However, I've only had a few dreams, and this is the only terrifying one I've had. That again, yeah, it sticks with me, and I've had it multiple times, and it's the same thing every single time. And my feeling with this dream is that perhaps it wasn't just okay, if I'm gonna be brave and just like say what I feel deep inside without the rational mind coming in, I think it was, I don't think it was a dream. I think it was something that was trying to, I don't know the word to use, like, I
Come
don't
on
know if
now.
it
Come
was
on now.
potentially
You
trying
got
to
it.
scare me, but yeah, like connect with me. I don't know what it was trying to do, but there was like this attempt. I feel like something was trying to make contact with me in some way, for possibly nefarious reasons because I was so terrified. I don't know, but it does seem like it wasn't a dream, and I don't know why they just stopped all of a sudden. Yeah, the shortest answer I have for you is I don't really have an explanation for it. And to be honest, I've mentioned this dream to maybe 2 other people, but I've never had an in-depth discussion about this. This is my first time having a discussion about this occurrence that happened. So,
Well, we're here to be your sleep paralysis experts.
okay.
We've got you, Madia. We've got you. And well done for you. Kudos to you for being brave, you know, and going there.
Yeah, you do feel a little crazy because my rational mind keeps wanting to say, well, it was just a dream. It was just a dream that I had, and I don't have it anymore. And it was this weird thing that happened, and the end. That's the end of the story. But yeah, if I'm very honest, there's something a lot deeper there. There was this strange experience that I had for a while, and I still to this day don't know quite what to make of it or what the purpose of it was, or if there was a purpose or anything. Yeah, no clue.
I think one thing that it does show, building on your language of contact, it shows that in your sleep state and perhaps even during your waking state, there's something unique about you that facilitates contact, you know, and that you get this sense. You said that you felt like they were waiting for you to sleep, you know, you could feel it. There's something about you that picks up on that, let's say, energy, you know, in terms of what's going on. And they were able to make contact with you whilst you were sleeping. And also, it seems as though you were able to make contact with them and have, what would I say? There was some two-way communication going on with you and them as you were able to change the colors of the room.
Mm-hmm.
And you instinctively knew and learned over time that you could do that. So there was some form of communication going on between you and them. You know, that's what I'm definitely hearing, and that there is something then unique to you where you're able to have those experiences for that to happen, you know.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
that's such an interesting, I'm looking at it in a totally different light now. Yeah, so fascinating.
It is. It is. It is. And it's something that until we allow ourselves to probe, to kind of ask that questions, to go there, unless we allow ourselves, we'll just kind of leave it there and we'll never know, you know. But if we give ourselves permission to ask those questions and to be brave, it, you know, it's like there's this whole new world. It's so wondrous and amazing. You know, there's so much out there for us to experience and to know once we allow ourselves, you know. Well, thank you again, Madia.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for hearing my story and having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you have any final words, Cyrus? Anything you'd like to say?
I do not. Thank you, and we'll send this video out to you when it's done editing. And check out our other podcasts, and please spread the word so we all don't look like we're crazy. We're going to come together so that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. All right then, Madia. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you.